Hey guys, it's time for another cake challenge tutorial. This time, the Brigadiers voted for the theme Childhood Toys. As always, stick around to the end of the video to see everybody's entries and vote for your favourite. I am doing this voiceover a little ahead of time, so I haven't actually seen all the entries yet, but I will pop them at the end of this video as they come in. Hopefully you will recognise this toy, especially if you are in the UK. It's the famous Bluebird Big Yellow Teapot. We're going to jump right in, and I've got my base board. That should be big enough to hold the cake and the handle and the spout. I am doing things a little bit differently in this tutorial, so keep your eyes peeled. Firstly, you want to grab yourself a half polystyrene sphere. These usually come as a whole sphere in two halves. The one I'm using is only a 6-inch round, but I have previously made ones using an 8-inch round. There's a few reasons why I'm using polystyrene as the base. This is the best thing for any cake that needs to be kept 100% round, such as a football, pokeball, that type of thing. Footballs are not slightly flat on the bottom. Alternatives to polystyrene are solid chocolate poured into a half sphere mould as a base, and similarly you can also use biscuit cake, which is just like the solid chocolate except it has crushed biscuits, raisins, Maltesers and other goodies in it. You cannot make a sponge cake that is fully 100% round and going to keep its shape. Gravity will take over and squash the bottom. If your cake is able to keep itself 100% round, you maybe want to question if you actually want to eat it if it's going to be so hard. Some of the half spheres come with these slots which help your spheres stay together. I'm just going to take these off with a nice sharp scalpel so that my sphere opening is fully flat. The rest of the components are all foam core. I've got this small circle which is going to be the base of our teapot, and then I've got a larger foam core circle which is going to cover the opening of our sphere. You want it large enough so that it doesn't fall inside, but small enough so that it doesn't quite reach the edges. You want a little bit of a gap all the way around. You're also going to need a wooden dowel. Now usually when you've seen me do central dowels in the past, you notice I usually stick two bass drums together so it's nice and deep for the dowel to sit in. I would recommend still doing that, but as this was just a challenge piece, nobody was eating it, it wasn't travelling anywhere, and ingredients are just getting more and more expensive, I'm just demonstrating it on one drum. You just want to hold your dowel up, taking in each piece that it has to pass through, and I'm just marking where to cut it so that I know it has to go through the drum, the foam core, the polystyrene, and then I want it to stick up just a little bit to hold the cake on top. Next thing you need to do is find the centre of both your foam core circles. I'm just using a ruler and I mark multiple points until they all cross. Once you've done that, you want to make a hole in each of these that is the same size as your dowel. Try not to cut them bigger. You can always go a little bit smaller and actually force the dowel through so it's nice and tight. Next, you need a hole in your drum. To do this, I've taken my drill bit that is slightly smaller in diameter than my dowel. The dowel is 12mm and on my drill bit, as you can see, is 10mm. The reason for this is that the drums are only cardboard and sometimes the hole can chew itself a little bit wider with a drill bit, so always go smaller. You want to drill part way down, fill the hole with hot glue and quickly place in your dowel, giving it a good few whacks with a hammer to push it all the way down to the bottom. Then quickly level it so it's completely straight. I like to do this with 2 set squares, moving it around and slowly nudging the dowel straight. Now leave this to fully set before gluing around the base and slipping over that first small foam core circle, squishing it into the glue. Next up is your half sphere. You can see I've just drilled using the same drill bit and I'm adding more glue around the bottom, but be warned, hot glue does melt polystyrene, so feel free just to let it cool for a couple of seconds before pushing that polystyrene down. This is how we're looking so far. Once that's set, you'll spot why I like to use polystyrene. Not only do you get cake, but you can also get sweets. I'm just using some leftover Halloween sweets, but you could fill yours with Maltesers, Skittles, money, anything you like. Then just make sure that that second foam core circle sits nicely over the top. Once you're happy it all fits, you want the hot glue on the very rim of your circle. It's easier to hot glue this because, like I said, the polystyrene will melt if you apply it to that first. You want to slip this down over your sweets, I've taken mine out now, and stick that circle to your sphere. By cutting your dowel hole nice and tight, you can see just how solid and secure this bottom half is now. It will only feel secure once that top foam core circle is on, and it's not going anywhere. We're now just going to make our dowel a bit more food safe by applying tape over the open top of the dowel and then slipping over some straws that have been cut in half. I've actually been able to push mine all the way down into the base of the sphere too. You might need 2 straws to secure your dowel. Once they're on, cut down any excess sticking up at the top and we're good to go. I'm applying ganache to the foam core to stick our cake down. Here is another difference. You never usually see this from me. This is a whole 6-inch tier. I've not bothered adding any filling, I've not bothered to cut it in half. Like I said, nobody is eating this one, it was just for the tutorial. When butter is £2 a block, you don't want to be wasting that stuff. You then just want to start carving that top tier into a sphere to match the bottom. If you have bought a full sphere, it's really handy to use the other polystyrene half to use as a carving guide to get it the right size. You then just want to coat the whole thing in a layer of ganache, making sure to fill that lip. Another handy tip is to get a nice free-flowing turntable. I'll leave everything I've used in the description box below. I have different turntables for different jobs. This one is super spinny and perfect for making applications like this. It's a little bit like a pottery wheel. It's super free flowing so you can get that sphere shape. Then when it comes to covering sugar paste, I switch back to my flat, firmer turntable as I don't want it spinning around on me as I'm trying to add sugar paste. Here I'm draping over my yellow paste, and to be honest, I wish I had wrapped this around the ball rather than draped it, but I kept going to show you no matter how messy you think you've covered it, you can still kind of get away with it. Here I have way too many pleats to try and get rid of, so I'm squashing the pleats together and then cutting off some of the overhang to make it less bulky. I've pushed them all towards the back so that the front looks a bit cleaner, and the back is where all these pleats are that I'm cutting. Once you've got the bulk off, you can start getting even closer with your cuts until they're almost flat and then rub away the seams. If I was to do this again, I would wrap a rectangle around the front towards the back instead. We now have a bumpy ball. The best smoothie you can have is a ball of sugar paste which will mould itself to the right shape. You just push the ball of paste into your fingers and then use it to smooth out all those imperfections. Keep going, they will eventually fade. You can tell you've applied a little bit of pressure and it's getting smoother as the sugar paste starts to squash right into your palm. And this is how we're looking so far. Whilst the paste is still soft, I'm taking a large circle cutter and rocking it across the surface to mark in the back of the cake where there's a door. I'm also just marking in a little bit of a hinge with my Dresden tool. These plunger cutters always come in handy. I have various shapes, but the square ones are great for little windows in the centre of the door. You just push through until you can just feel the ganache and then remove the little squares of paste. I'm covering the board in Atlantic blue. I'm not even gonna lie, as much as I love Renshaws, this is the worst colour in the world to work with. It just wants to rip on you every second, but I just about got it on there. I've then rolled a long yellow sausage, which I'm just wrapping around the bottom of that foam core circle as the base of our teapot. There's a few different ways you could make the spout, but to always keep it lightweight, I'm using foam core. I've just got a scrap piece that I'm sketching a spout shape onto, and you just want to cut it out and hold it up to the cake to make sure it's the right size. To get a better cut in your foam core, make sure you're using a brand new blade on your scalpel. Now the spout isn't 2D, we want to make it a little bit more 3D, so I'm just drawing around my spout again on a scrap piece and cutting out a smaller shape from the inside, duplicating it again so I have two. The purpose of this is that it adds a little bit of width to my spout that is still lightweight. I've just glued all these pieces together using hot glue, and I decided to just take off that little sharp point at the top. So now it looks like this. The great thing about foam core is that you can easily insert supports such as kebab sticks and cocktail sticks. I've got one main one in the centre and two cocktail sticks to make sure it holds in place. I'm then using yellow sugar paste to soften the step between the foam core pieces, just adding sausages and squashing them out to make it a bit more rounded before covering it in another piece of yellow paste. I'm just folding the piece over to cover both sides at once, trimming off the excess and trying to neaten it all up, getting rid of the seams as I go. Like I said, there are multiple ways to make the spout. If you're doing solid sugar paste, it can sometimes be a little bit too heavy for your cake, so you could always try Rice Krispie treats as well. Now I'm inserting the spout to the front. Just be mindful that the bottom supports will be inserted into the polystyrene and the top ones will go into the cake. So it's just a case of trying to line it up correctly so that it goes in. For the handle, I'm bending a piece of wire. This one was roughly 18 gauge and I'm just nipping it down to size. We only need to make one of the ends food safe. To do this, I've taken a clear straw and I've pushed sugar paste down inside it so that when I insert my wire inside, the sugar paste will eventually set on the wire and it won't wobble around inside the straw. The bottom doesn't matter as this is going into the polystyrene and not the cake. Just line it up and push them in gently until the loop is the size that you want it. The handle is a long sausage with the centre cut open, and you're just going to wrap that centre cut around the wire, pushing the joins back together as you go. Just keep blending the handle and the seams. For the top of the teapot, you want to roll out a chunky disc, and then I'm laying some cling film over the top and using a circle cutter to push down, which will push the cling film tight. This means you don't have any wrinkles, and as you uncover it and remove the excess, you're left with a nice soft dome shape. And then placing this in the centre, gently pressing it down before adding the rim of the lid, which is another sausage of paste. The handle on top is just a squashed ball. The windows are soft square shapes. I'm just taking my red paste and my multi-square cutter and then scoring in some wood lines before cutting out the doorway. If you haven't guessed by now, I do everything by eye. It just comes with practice. I'm then using my metal scraper to make deep indents just like the toy. The edges of the windows are ever so slightly softened, so I'm just tapping those sharp edges, and then I'm using a circle cutter to cut out the very centre. I'm then using the same circle cutter to cut out black circles, which I'm placing back inside the squares. If things start to get out of shape, you can just pop them back inside the square cutter to even them out again. From the red circles you cut out, I'm cutting out a red cross shape to insert them back in as the centres of the windows. Apply these to the front of the teapot with a little bit of water, and the bottom of the door has a big chunky rectangle sitting along the bottom which hides the hinge. You can of course change this cake up by having the doorway open, which turns into a set of stairs, or adding in the characters and the car from the playset. We're using that blue again and making a sausage to go over the door. Then there's matching ones that go over the window and straight ones that go under the windows. The last detail is that little yellow door knocker, which I'm just rolling a thin string, looping it into a circle and nipping off any excess before rolling it very gently between two fingers to mask the join a bit. Place that join towards the top as it's then further hidden by the little loop that attaches it to the door. And we're done. This is a very iconic toy from a lot of people's childhoods. Let me know what your favourite toy was in the comments, and don't forget to hang around and watch all the other entries coming up in just a few seconds. Hope you enjoyed this one. This is the base for all my Pokeball cakes, and it's a great compromise between half cake and half sweets, so you get the best of both worlds. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to vote in the comments below, and I'll see you again in the next video.